Good day. This is Redhawk, and we're here at the deep end. Today we're going to go where we go every week, but we're going to talk about how it is we go, and it's through wonder. Now I want you to look around you right now, and I want you to think about everything around you and where it came from. Now if you're in a car, well, let's start with the wheels, because they're probably the oldest. The circle, the first symbol is actually a circle, probably from the sun and the moon. And when we think of wheel, we think of somebody, some guy coming up with it to help transportation, but it probably didn't happen that way. It probably was some woman who was a potter and thought, if we could turn this around like a sun or a moon, we could make a pot a lot easier out of this clay. The wheel. And that's just the first part of a car. But don't you ever just wonder? I wonder all the time. And I want to invite you into that world. Welcome to the deep end. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're listening. And we hope you're having a wonderful day. You know, wonder is an amazing thing because it's probably the most natural thing. It just happens. We wonder without any provocation. Now, Mary Anne, are you a wanderer?
I am a wanderer. I can get lost looking out a window for hours.
Yeah, that's a sucker question because we've been wandering together. We're wondering and wandering. What do they say? All who wander are not lost.
I have a T-shirt that says that.
Yeah, there you go. And we're just wandering together. And the deep end is really about wandering in all these different directions. But you know, like metaphysics, it's like, what do you do after you have the physics? What does it mean? Today we're going to wonder about wonder. We're going to do meta-wonder. And, you know, the wheel is a perfect thing when you think about it. And for me, wondering is my life. I don't think I was ever a particularly good pastor when I was a working minister. I think I was okay. I loved people. I tried to be with them and all that. But I was a pretty good wanderer. And I like to wonder. I feel sometimes like I got paid to wonder. And so today we're going to wonder about wonder. And I wonder what you think of when you think of wonder, Mary Anne.
Well, I think of there is so much that we don't understand. And for me, wondering is appreciating that, but also the ability to be able to fill in those gaps and create new scenarios. And, and I think that's part of being a writer, too, is where you kind of just go. I heard Anne Lamott speak. This weekend, and she talked about the whole what if. So what if this? Then you kind of go down that path and wonder what that would look like. Or what if this? And you go down that path and decide. And that's wondering.
Amen. And you know, what I'd like everybody to understand, and I've probably mentioned this in a previous podcast, but wonder is really a form of play. It's mental play that comes out of these neurological narratives that just happen. It's hard to look at anything without thinking about it. And what play is now considered the opposite of depression. So I'm going to suggest that wondering is a healthy thing to do. And I'm not just suggesting it, but if play is the opposite of depression, then we are definitely in a position to offer some therapeutic response to our own depressive state of mind as a country and as a planet sometimes.
And the world needs it.
Yeah, we need to be more playful. Joseph Campbell talked about in one of his last books, The Inner Reaches of Outer Space, saying every step we take into the universe is really a step into ourselves. We're learning our proportion. We're learning our perspective. We're learning where we fit. And we're learning that the whole universe can fit inside of us in this little matrix that's somehow being neurologically generated by our chemistry in the brain. Dig that.
We're little laboratories.
And we be percolating. and so what I want us to do is to have a sense that our percolating is natural, 2, our percolating is healthy. And 3, I want us to see that everything around you has come out of it. It's an amazing event, this wondering happening that's within us, because it doesn't stay inside us. It produced a steam engine. We're back at the car. I mean, the internal combustion engine, I don't know how many of y'all really know how that works, but it's a crazy idea. I mean, we're talking about how many explosions that are happening in a controlled environment in your car in a minute, you know.
Well, I still can't get on an airplane and not wonder, how in the heck am I flying above the earth?
And when you start wondering, you start seeing this little tube is hanging up here on 1,000,000 years of evolution,
Right.
of people wondering and noticing little things, and then creating a little world out of it and trying something. And, you know, it took us a while to get the wing down and understand the physics of it, but wow, what a trip. What a trip. How we create a vacuum above this piece of cloth originally that lifts us off the ground. Is that a trip or what? How can you not wonder about that?
I wonder about the first person that wondered and took action and put that into motion. Because somebody invented these things. Somebody, you know, and it's just, wow.
And we're still doing it. And now
Right.
we're not wondering alone. We have these whole corporate entities wondering. And I'm going to suggest, I'm not suggesting, I know this for a fact. The United States has created the biggest innovative engine in the history of the human family. A partnership between universities, industry, and the government has created this unbelievable thing. Now, we're losing that right now. We're pooching the deal, and that's a whole other issue, and I'll bring it up every once in a while because America's hurting. Patriots, come on, rise up. A little sidebar.
Well, let's wonder about that.
Let's wonder. But we created a wonder engine and created a whole civilization. I mean, the transistor that came out of Bell Labs, it was the first time really where it wasn't a person, it wasn't an Edison, it wasn't this person or that. It was a corporation, and they were working in concert again with governments and with universities. It's amazing what wondering can do, and we're not done yet. We're not even close to done. As a matter of fact, we've begun to wonder about ourselves in a way that's wonderful.
Well, and I think we're evolving too as a species, and there's a lot of wondering on, you know, what is that next evolutionary step for human beings? What are we going to do next?
Exactly, and we're reaching, and whether it's the Bill Gates or the Stephen Jobs or the Bozos or the whole thing, the Musks, we're wondering at a global level now. It's all of us together. And if we can put the Chinese and the Indians from India and the European, which we're part of, wow, that's going to be a wonder engine. Right now we're working against each other. We're stealing each other's ideas instead of creating a field where all these wonderings come together.
Well, and the next part of that, too, is we all have to come together because we're moving out into the stars. We're moving out. You know, I was just listening to someone talking about that station that they want to have on the moon, and it's coming through private industry. It's not coming through countries. So it's coming from a concerted worldwide effort that we're going to start moving out. And if we can't get it together here, I wonder what that will look like.
Well, and now we're starting to wonder what this country is going to look like when we're no longer the United States of America. And that is a possible outcome of where we are, and it's great for those who can handle 24/7 news, what I call the digestive system of America. You can watch different pieces of information being, regurgitated over and over and digested, and how we try to process all this. We're all trying to wonder what's going to happen and what's our next best step. And this podcast started, if you go back to our intro, with the three orders of wonder, and I've brought them up over and over. I've always been trying to hang my wonder on some kind of schematic so I can see how it fits. And that, of course, is how things become manifest. And for me, the three orders of wonder, I'll repeat them again here today, is being. And remember, there's all these sciences. This is where physics is. This is where geology is. There's all these sciences. If you really wonder and get into it, you can find a place to set up camp and spend your life wondering in that direction. The next order of wonder is given rise to by the first order. It's when being dances and becomes more complex and somehow becomes life. And life is that second order of wonder. And that's the place where, the biosciences, the medical sciences, all of this is there. If you wonder about life, and believe me, there's a lot to wonder about when it comes to life. And life gives rise to the third order of wonder in my mind, and that's consciousness. And you hearing these words, us creating a language, us creating a medium through which we can not just communicate, but share values and ideas and create a civilization that works to some degree, that's consciousness. And there's all these social sciences, there's all these psychological sciences, there's now spirituality, and you can get into these, where I lived in religion, go back to religion and spirituality, which is not like most of you are thinking about it, but for me, religion was a cross-reference field to wonder within all three of those orders of wonder. How do they come together? And this show is really about that as well. What are the issues and processes that life cannot do without, that consciousness and being cannot do without? So, this show is about wondering. It's about trying to grow and create a garden of greater wondering and not leave it. And this is so important to me, because what we've done is we've left wondering to our children, to our artists, our scientists, a few monks and nuns, and maybe a few rare theologians who are honest. So forget that. Everybody's wondering already, right? You're wondering? I bet you're wondering, why the hell am I listening to this podcast?
Why do we do anything? There's a wonder there.
Exactly. So right. What I'm doing today is trying to lay out a schematic of wondering, and not just a schematic, but an invitation to this natural process that we're all wanderers. We are meaning makers, and what we're doing by doing that, by looking at anything, we see it, we appropriate it, we find a use for it, and then we give it meaning beyond its specific use.
Well, and there's an aspect of curiosity there, too, that spurs us to try to figure things out and to wonder about them.
Yeah. And, figuring things out is an extension of wonder into the pragmatic. And it's where our wondering finally, lands somewhere and starts taking root and creating an idea that can then take form. And, we watch nature doing this all around us, and I wonder, how is that happening? Which is a whole, again, wonder about that.
And this is a great time of year for that.
Oh, my gosh, it is awesome, It is awesome. I'm trying to just make space for the wasps. Basically, in my wasp nest killers. That's the space I have for them. I have these things that catch wasps. That's whoever, my daughter-in-law works for a company called Rescue, which creates these traps that catch wasps. And I just go, golly, man, entomology, which is the study of insects, those little six-legged thingies, and eight-legged thingies. What an amazing field. I took a beekeeping class because I'm thinking of becoming a beekeeper. And, you think we got bees down, we know what's with them. Man, oh man, they started laying out research at the growing edge of what we know about bees. And I'm going, well, bees are still a mystery.
And that's just one insect.
one insect. And if the bee gets in trouble, we're all in trouble, because how are we going to self-pollinate all that stuff? We're going to have people with little paintbrushes or, that shake up the pollen or something. I mean, you see where wonder is taking us?
And that's my wonder, that connection, how we're all connected. And if one fails, we all fail. Or if one succeeds, we all succeed.
And as we wonder at that level of consciousness, at that level of social science and civilization and mythology, and we've been talking about that here, we see what holds us together. We see the invisible nature of symbols. I started with wondering about the wheel of a car. And I mean, the first thing I go to is the sun and the moon, because that's, again, are the earliest symbols that we have is the circle. And, of course, it seems obvious now that it would be the circle. But that circle, as we wondered about it, and not just wondered about what it's in the sky, but as we brought that into the pragmatism of our soul, it became something. It became a way to do pottery that created art and culture. What if 50,000 years ago, the Great Leap Forward, which something happened, all started with a woman and a pottery wheel. And once we had the pottery wheel, we could make beautiful pots, but then we realized they were beautiful and we had to adorn them. And that first adornment created culture, which began to share something greater than just what's between us at the tribal level, but what's between us as a community level and the way we interface with nature herself.
Well, and we're creating what we've seen in nature. We see the beauty in nature, and now we're creating something that brings beauty into the world.
Yeah. I mean, right now, Mary Anne, you and I are sitting in my basement under fluorescent lights. Actually, they're LEDs now. God bless someone wondering about the light-emitting diode, which is a whole wonder. My brother was an electrical engineer, and he'd never let me not know something. We're sitting here, and we're sitting in an environment that is self-created. And we think the apple tree does apples. What does the human tree create? Birds create nests, all different kinds of nests. Look at the insects and all the different kinds. There's a spider that lives underwater in little bubbles that it takes down there. Can you believe that? And it's an air-breathing spider, but it creates bubbles and then takes them underwater and creates a little nest inside a bubble underwater. Nests, homes. You see what we've done? Just as birds create bird things and nests, as spiders create little homes, we do the same. We don't just create apples. We create lights and guitars and pictures on our walls and Jesus with sacred hearts drawn in them, and you know what I mean? And clothes we wear and fashion. It's what we do. We live inside the fruits of our own existence.
Well, and what part of that sustains us, our life? That's kind of some of the things that we create. It's not so much about the basics. It goes beyond into that conscious level, and we're creating something where we can wonder bigger, wonder deeper, and look at beauty and create beauty rather than just creating shelter. Okay, shelter keeps us warm in the winter, or we create beautiful dishes for eating, and but when we start to create into that next realm, I think that takes us to a whole new realm of wonder.
And the wonder, we're now talking about creating leisure time, okay, right. Our technology and all this stuff, and we've adorned the walls of our caves. We've created new and creative caves to live in. Our nests are changing. Every room in my house has a function, man. I got the kitchen, I got the room with the TV in it, I got my basement here with my studio in it. Everything seems to work. But the human family is still reaching, and we're creating more leisure time. And what we're doing with that leisure time is is not always a good use. We're actually letting other people's ideas run our lives instead of allowing our lives to run the world. And that's the whole piece that I think the human family is coming to. We've talked about planetary civilization. We're reaching for that. And the more leisure time we have, the more time we have to wonder. And the more we discipline that wonder, the greater rooting we will have and the better world we're going to have, because we'll have more people thinking about it. And if everybody's thinking about it, the ideas are going to just promulgate.
Right, because I think we are contributing to that. And I'm taking a class by Caroline Miss right now, and one of the things that she's talking about is how much our choices matter. Those individual little choices that we make every minute, we are contributing to what's out here. And when we recognize that and we take responsibility for that, and you're right, that the discipline of not just wasting away, every single thought, every single decision we make has a ripple effect.
Amen. It's vectors. And I'll tell you, if you don't believe that, I want you to think about a brilliant thinker that I've just discovered. He won the Pulitzer Prize. He's only 30 years old. He's Mia Farrow and Woody Allen's son. Some say, someone's asked him, he said, well, you could be Frank Sinatra's son. And he said, well, anybody could be Frank Sinatra's son. And that's Ronan Farrow. He won the Pulitzer Prize for an article he wrote on Weinstein. And NBC wouldn't touch it. He works for NBC. So he went and pitched it to the New Yorker. They published it, and he got a Pulitzer Prize. Now, my family reads books. I'm not the first to get it. My son is, but he wrote a book called War on Peace. And it's basically about how America is undoing the State Department to the detriment of the planet, and literally is creating a war on peace itself, because the State Department. This young man, he's 30 years old, is one of the most brilliant thinkers I've ever heard. I've heard him on 2 or 3 shows. I think he's on a morning show on NBC. I've never seen him on that, but I've seen him interviewed. He's brilliant. He is a human being who has begun to wonder at a new order of wonder. And he's wondering at the global order. And see, that's where we are now. We could still wonder. I mean, on TV you see the ads. Joe Foreman used to do it on Invent Help. If you have an idea, you think you make a good invention, call Invent Help. And they will help you. They'll help you weave through the thing. They'll help you see if it's already an idea that's in queue. It's an amazing piece. My brother had a couple patents, and basically with disabled people, so I know that process a little bit. But there are new people out there. There are new visionaries. There are new Americans who are now thinking about who we are and wondering in a new way. They're seeing the limitation of how we've governed ourselves and interpreted our own system. They've begun to see enough of the weak spots that they add up to a true anomaly. And this is how science works. You create a theory in science, and you keep creating it, and there's these little pieces called anomalies, and you keep putting them aside until finally there's a whole bucket full of anomalies, and you say, we got to reconcile this bucket of anomalies into our picture at some point. And somebody wonders, an Einstein on the edge of that took that bucket of anomalies and turned it into 2 theories that changed the way we think. General and special theory of relativity. And if you really want to go into that, get a book by Lincoln Barnett, called The Universe and Dr. Einstein. It's a very short book. He'll go through both those theories with you beautifully, and you'll understand them. It's a layperson's book. Einstein knew how to wonder. Leonardo da Vinci knew how to wonder. These wanderers created new worlds. And I'm going to suggest, for those of you who've had trauma in your life, for those of you who've had some disruption or depression, you know how when we change the way we think, our whole being can begin to change and shift. That's a paradigm shift in our own thinking as we wonder. My own view of religion and my own wondering and reaching and demanding an answer, or at least the next order of wonder in an honest way, totally pierced my view of what I think of the church, and how it in my mind keeps people trapped in a small little universe of wonder, instead of allowing them to go to those places that are mysterious and anxiety producing. And that's part of what wonder is. And I want you to get that. Wonder is not always a secure place. It creates anxiety because you begin to think about things at the edge of your own comfort, of your own situation of justification. My daughter over and over talks about our privilege as white people. And I says, well, you think you got privilege, you should be a white guy. And then she smacks me. But we're beginning to wonder about that. We're beginning, not just beginning, we're deep into the wonder of the social limitations and all the little ways that we do that. You know, calling police on a black person sitting down who's waiting for a friend versus a white person who's sitting down at a coffee shop. Wow, what a great wonder. So I want to invite you all into wonder. I want you to do it for 3 reasons. First, it's a form of play. We've talked about that. The second is, and this is important, there is no tomorrow without wonder. I'm serious. The only thing you get tomorrow without wonder is dogma. You get the same thing of yesterday. And believe me, yesterday is tomorrow's dogma. So wonder yourself out of that one, suckers. The other thing about wonder is it has a high yield in real stuff. Look around you. Again, if you're driving a car, do you know how many layers of wonder you're driving in? Mary Anne talked about the airplane.
Right.
1,000,000 years of wonder hanging up there.
Well, yeah, just think of it. You're hurtling down the road at 60 miles an hour in a little box.
Yeah. And the fact that we can, the kids in the back seat can play a game of chess, and they're moving. How can things moving that fast work together? It's relativity. Everything in the car is relative. It's all moving together, right? Mm-hmm. But it's hard to play chess with the person in the car who's only going 30 miles an hour and you're going 60. It doesn't work because you're not relative. But if you got a flatbed truck and they're both going 60 miles an hour and you got magnets, you can sit there and play against an inter-truck game of chess because you're relative. It's an amazing thing. You know, I was caught. My wife caught me in the kitchen one time, and I had the frying pan, and I was just sitting there staring at it. She says, "What are you doing?" And I said, I just saw a show on cosmology, and they talked about these suns that when they start producing iron, they're ready to collapse on themselves and die. And so I'm sitting there looking at my frying pan and going, this sucker's a star killer. I'm sitting there, I'm going to fry my eggs on a star killer. And there's, to me, that connection, I love that. I actually get high on those connections.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
A little distracted, maybe.
Yeah, it might take a little longer to cook your eggs.
But it's a well-cooked egg. And then you start wondering about the egg, and I won't even go there because I won't. But another reason for wonder, and this is the most important one, the greatest threat to the human family is not technology. It's not weapons of mass destruction, but it's the way we think. And we've talked about this before. We've talked about how we think and how our thinking gets us in trouble. And, what are we going to build with the technology we have? Are we going to build weapons, or are we going to build solutions and to our problems? And
destruction or creation? It
all comes down to what it's always come down to. I can use that sharp rock to skin my food, or I can use that sharp rock to kill my neighbor. And it's been in the human wheelhouse since the beginning. And so now we have to use our wonder to create more wonder, to create more life and consciousness. And this, we've talked about the point of it all. That's it. And I'm not sure there's anything that goes beyond creating a new tomorrow. I don't think there's anything that goes beyond putting an end to suffering. I don't think there's anything that goes beyond the empathy that creates the compassion that allows us to give a damn about each other. So wonder on that.
I will.
Any final comments, Mary Anne?
Just the idea of suffering, and you're right. I think it's going to take wondering in order to solve that problem, in order to find the way that we can be most beneficial to help others.
To help others. And to understand in our wondering that when we help another, we're helping the very fabric of the society that helps us. It is not a wholly other act. It literally is always feeding back on us.
That's right.
And
there's only one of us here, right?
There's only one of us here. Boy, isn't that the truth? And as I get older, I go, man, oh man, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Am I going to leave all this to my kids to sort out? Jeezy peasy. I wonder about that, And if you don't think we're wondering about the last days, you should watch TV during the day, because all it's about is insurance policies, Medicare, the drugs old people should take. I'm telling you.
They know their audience, right?
Yeah, they know their audience, man. It's just a trip. It's a trip. So where should we go next, Mary Anne?
I don't know. I'll have to wonder about that.
Well, you kind of brought it up in the show, and I'll end us on this note. So when we wonder, we have to make choices. Choices. Mary Anne talked about that in today's podcast about, we're making choices, and we have to understand the implication of those choices. We have to understand the vectors. In other words, how this situation, like that article that Ronan Farrow wrote, what that opened up is the whole Me Too movement. It fed right into it. And now, on the news last night, I saw Ashley Judd taking a swap at Weinstein to sue him. I watched a prostitute and a porn star, another suit against the president. My gosh, a choice. A choice. And our institutions and our industry are making choices that are affecting all of us. And some of us are being left out. And so the choices have gone to the top. How do we bring the choices back down to us? What are those choices? We hope you'll join us in our next podcast here at the Deep End on choice, making choices. God's peace, God bless, and in all things, may life be abundant.